Episode of The Modern Zoologist, and I'm your host, Nature Nick. And today with me, I of course have Meatloaf, the 20-pound Flemish giant rabbit. I have Bubbles with me today, the African Barbary falcon, and I have my friend Milkshake, the milk snake, here with me. So today we're going to be talking about reptile feeding, an aspect of reptile feeding, and I get emails and questions about this all the time. Actually, a friend of mine, a close friend of my family, is going through this right now with their snake. And people ask me, what do I do if my snake has stopped eating? And this is a problem I've encountered working with snakes for a couple of times, and it is fairly common. So let me start off saying that this is mostly associated with one species of snakes, okay? And this is the reason why I don't maintain them. It's very common in ball pythons. And ball pythons are one of the few reptiles that are still collected in the wild and sold into the pet trade. The problem with that is that you can't get them to accept frozen mice or even domesticated lab mice. They will not eat them. Rats, they won't eat them. And they're the most famous snakes for not eating, okay? And they could go up to 2 years without eating and just waste away and slowly be dying. And that's a horrible experience to have for any pet, okay? And definitely for a snake, okay? And with all your animals, you of course want them eating and drinking and being healthy. And if an animal's not eating, it's causing you, the pet owner, to lose your mind. So what do you do if your snake has stopped eating? Most important thing that you absolutely want to do is bring it to a reptile specialty veterinarian. You want to make sure that there isn't an underlying medical condition that's causing this. An example of this, I used to have big 10-foot albino Burmese pythons, and that happened to one of my pythons. He stopped eating. He didn't want to eat anything. This was years ago. And I brought him to my veterinarian, and lo and behold, he had an upper respiratory infection. And snakes are very prone to that, conditions like that, because they only have one working lung. We as people and as mammals, we have two lungs. So if something happens to one of our lungs, and our second one, our backup one, will kick on. And that's why we can get through colds fairly quickly, within a week, 2 weeks. Because snakes only have one working lung, it could take them months and months and months to recover from that. I had to get him on antibiotics, injectable antibiotics. He had almost like an inhaler I had to set up, an asthma inhaler, and Buterol I had to give him. It was quite a long experience. Thank God he was able to recover, and after 6 months he finally ate a rat. So there are other conditions also that I won't get into for this video. I'm not a veterinarian, and we want to keep this video, like the rest of the series, short and concise and as non-technical and as simple as possible. So bring him to your veterinarian, rule that out. Once you've ruled out any medical condition, okay, let's take into account what your snake is. Let's assume you have a ball python, an older one, that you have a feeling might be an import, okay? The first thing you'd want to go to is stop feeding him frozen mice, start giving him live mice. Okay, that's going to be as similar as his wild diet as you possibly can. You can also switch the color of the mice. If at all possible, if you can switch from white, switch them to black mice, brown mice, okay? That's the best option. Assuming you brought the snake to the vet, nothing wrong with the snake, it's an older snake, ball python, that's the best thing. Switch from mice to rats. You can also get frozen chicks and try that. Try baby bunnies. All of these different types of prey smell differently to snakes. Different colored prey. That's why I suggested with the colored mice. They all look different and smell different. Okay, you wouldn't think so. They can't really see colors, but for some reason they can smell the difference in color. I can't explain it. So that's a big reason for it too. So those are your best bets for that route, okay? Let's assume you've tried all of those things and it didn't work, okay? You've tried another trick that I've done, and it actually happens with this very milk snake once a year. For part of the year, I bring my animals to Florida. We live in Florida for a few months in the winter time, which is pretty nice. But for some reason, I can't explain it, this snake that I'm holding, she stops eating her food. She goes off eating, and she eats frozen thawed small mice once a week religiously for years and years and years. For some reason, when we started going to Florida, the first week that they're there, she stops eating. And I have no idea why. I still have no idea why. I did all the troubleshooting of feeding a snake that you possibly can do, and ended up, the one thing that worked, and you'll see this sometimes online, I took the mouse, and it sounds very horrific and gross and disgusting. I want to take a sewing needle and poke it into the skull of the frozen dead mouse. It's already dead, okay, so it's not going to feel it. You insert that in and pull it back out. Or you can also scalp the top of the mouse. It's already dead. I'm not talking about live mice, okay? If there's any animal rights people out there, I'm talking about a mouse that's already dead, that you bought at a pet store, it was already dead sitting in your freezer, okay? It sounds horrible. It's not pretty to look at. My wife almost fainted when she saw me doing this. But it's the only thing that I can get the snake to do. For the past 3 years, for the first week in January that we go to Florida, there's something in the atmosphere that causes her body to react differently. But as soon as she smells that scalped mouse, she goes right back to eating. So those are the things that I have found that work best for me. Okay, so let's assume you've exhausted all of this, okay? Your snake is still not eating. You have to remember, I know it's very stressful. I'm just thinking back to when I'm going through this. It's not fun, okay? You want to do something to save your sanity. Just remember that the snakes and reptiles can go a very, very long time without eating. And like I said, bring your snake to the veterinarian. If you have a veterinarian who's ruled out any medical diagnosis and you have a trained professional telling you that the snake will not die, that will sometimes help your sanity. Sometimes I'll bring my animals to the veterinarian just to save my sanity, to have some professional telling me that it's going to be okay and hold my hand a little bit. That's perfectly okay to do. So you'll want to bring them to the veterinarian. And the veterinarian can force feed your snake. If it comes down to that, like I said, snakes can go a very long time without eating. So it will probably be a significant amount of time before your veterinarian will want to do that with a gabbage or a syringe. I have seen snake handlers who are more experienced than I am, probably more experienced than you are, but they can take a syringe of baby food and put that down into the trachea of the snake and into the stomach and pump a little bit of baby food into the snake and just to keep the snake going. I don't know how to do that. I'm not going to instruct anyone to do that. I really think only a veterinarian should do that. If you're a lay person in this aspect, I'm a lay person in that aspect. I wouldn't feel qualified enough to do that. I would leave that up to my veterinarian to do that for me. Okay, so let's assume that didn't even work. And you brought it to the vet, and the vet said, that couldn't get a syringe in. Let's assume you've lost a snake to this. Okay, the snake just starved itself to death after several months and years, which would be horrible. How do you prevent this from happening again? Okay, you have to research the type of snake that you want to get. Okay, unfortunately, the most common snakes in the pet trade, and you see it all over the internet, the best snakes for beginners are ball pythons. Okay, they're great snakes. They don't get that big. They don't bite. They don't require a huge terrarium. But for this reason alone of them not eating, I do not recommend ball pythons to beginners. Let's say you have your heart set on a ball python. You want a ball python. If you're going to do it, get a baby one. Okay, you'll see them at Petco, PetSmart, a reptile specialty store when they're like that big, when they're like hatchling or only a couple of months old. That's the age you want to get them. Okay, you have peace of mind that they're captive born. They usually have very clean, supple-looking skin. That's usually an indication of a captive-born snake. The imported ball pythons just look very beat up. They have a very dull shine to them. You can usually tell after seeing a couple of snakes which one's an import, which one's captive-born. So when you get that baby snake, ask the pet store clerk or whoever it is that's working to feed the snake. If they say, don't worry, it was already fed, I did it yesterday, I've seen it, say, okay, I'll come back in a week. What day of the week do you feed your snakes, okay? Is it Mondays? I'll come back next Monday. And what time is it? I'll come, and I cannot buy the snake until I see it eat. And that's perfectly reasonable. Do not let anyone pressure you into buying an animal. And this is a big reason of why I started this channel. I want you to be an advocate for your animals, and I want to be an advocate for you as a pet owner, for some reason, when people buy animals, they really let people walk all over them. They don't use their common sense like they would when they buy something like a car or a house or another big ticket item. Animals require the same amount of consumer education as those things. And you have to be your own advocate when you go to these places, okay? You cannot let anyone pressure you into getting an animal. It's in many ways even more serious, I think, than buying something like a car or a credit card or a house. So that's what you need to say to them, okay? So if I've talked you out of getting a ball python, there are other snakes that I would recommend, bar none, before I'd recommend a ball python. One of them I'm holding, and this is a big reason why I have milk snakes. I used to have pythons and tropical snakes. Dealing with the heating, if the heating isn't quite right, like I said, they can get sick and get upper respiratory infections. The pythons, the boa constrictors, they'll start holding their body against their enclosure to try to drain the fluid out of their lungs. It's just a lot to deal with, okay? If you have family members and you have children running around, forget it. You'll have your parents or an aunt or uncle. They're going to be trying to get you to get rid of your snake. Once you say you have a python or a boa constrictor and you have kids running around, forget it, okay? If you have a milk snake or a corn snake or a rat snake, it's not so bad. And when people see these guys, although they can be the same length as a ball python, if you look at how thin she is, she's only like the diameter of my pinky. And that's the case for all of the colubrids. This is the group of snakes that I'm talking about. And they don't require as much heating. So because they don't require as much heating as a tropical species, they're much more forgiving when if you mess something up, if you're a novice snake owner. Because they're so much more forgiving, if they're feeling a little chilly, they'll still eat, okay? This is a big reason why I switched over to milk snakes, okay, and colubrids. They're really my favorite types of snakes at this point. And but like I said, ask the pet store clerk to see you to let them see you feed that you want to see the animal eat, okay? Do not take a snake, especially a snake, out of the pet store until you see it eat. Very important for most reptiles, but very important for a snake. So I hope these tips have helped you out. I hope you enjoy all of your animals and your reptiles and your snakes. This is Nature Nick, and if you like the video, be sure to like and subscribe, and be sure to visit my Amazon affiliate page that will be put in the description. I'll have a whole bunch of snake-related products in there, and like I said, if you don't want to buy the product that's in there, just follow that link and buy whatever you want, whatever your heart wants on Amazon, okay? That's why everyone's shopping is Amazon now, and that will really go a lot. I'll get credit for that, and that will help my animals and my channel grow. So until next time, this is Nature Nick, the Modern